Oh, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. Welcome to NAB 2018. I'll move pretty quickly because we've got quite a lot to get through, and I know you've got other interviews and other appointments. So it's been a pretty big year. In fact, we joked the other day, we've got like 3 killer products this year, and it's not that they're really great. I mean, they are, but they almost killed the development teams. Like, they literally almost killed people. So it's been a pretty intense year, but I think we've got some really nice things. So you might have seen some of the banners on the halls. One thing I wanted to mention first is we have a development booth just down the hall down here. So if anyone you know who's doing coding or trying to work with our products, we've got a whole bunch of engineers down there. So they're all the actual guys who wrote some of the code. So if anyone needs some coding help, and there'll be sessions and things as well. It's like a developer conference. That the best time to do this is NAB, so it's a bit of an experiment and see how it goes. So to start with, we're doing some new converters. We've been revamping our converter range. We have a new up-down cross converter. It's up-down cross converter HD. It basically converts any format to any other format. Here it is here. Got some dip switches on the side for setting the video standard, and it also does some computer scan rates as well. Our older model was getting a bit dated, so we wanted to update it. It's really good for putting, it protects any equipment from the wrong video standard, but it's also good for plugging into computers, and it doesn't matter what the computer settings are. It'll allow you to just take care of it. So that'll be $155, and it's available now. The next converter we've got is a Blackmagic Multi-View 4 HD. This is the same as the larger multi-view we have. It's got on-screen titles, audio meters, a whole bunch of other settings. You can plug in the USB and reprogram it. It's got SDI and HDMI out. Good thing about a multi-view is it doesn't matter what video input each input is. It just, it'll work with 4 different video standards, and it's fine. And that'll be $185, and it's available now. The next one we've got is a mini converter optical fiber. This replaces the 2 other optical fiber converters we've got. But this is a 12G one, and it doesn't come with the SFP module. You plug in whatever module you might have, and then it just works. And it does all the formats up to 12, up to 1080, 2160p 60, because it's 12G. It's bidirectional, so that you can have different video standards going in different directions. And that'll be $155, and that's available now. The next one is a microconverter bidirectional. This is like 2 of our bidirectional converters built into one. So it does conversions in both directions, different standards. And it's got SDI to HDMI, HDMI to SDI in all the HD video formats. And that'll be from $65. So that's the converters. So now I want to talk about live production. We've done a few things this year. One of the things we've done is...
Attention all exhibitors.
Oh, there's a nice announcement. So one of the things we've done is we've been working on the HyperDeck Studio Mini. We've added H.264 to that. And so what it'll do, it'll work in HD, and it'll be a free update. We're showing it here on the booth, and it'll be available probably in a few weeks' time. What it'll let you do is record to H.264, and so you get much longer record times. You can use like cheaper media as well. And it's not a media player, so it only plays back the media it records on, because it's recording, playing back a specific flavor of H.264. That'll get better over time, but the main thing is people needed something to allow it to master record for much longer durations. So that'll be a free update, but it does play back. Sorry, you can open the files in any software because it's proper H.264. It's really the playback side that's a bit restricted on what it'll play back. So, but the main thing is it's common to use it as a master recorder, and that's going to be quite good for that. So I think that'll be a nice software update. That's a $695, I think, product. So I think it'll be a nice improvement to it. What we haven't mentioned actually is that also the Ethernet's faster. This now runs the camera operating system, so it's running Blackmagic OS. All the software's been replaced. And so even though you see H.264, what you're actually seeing is a complete replacement in software. So we've been using the Blackmagic OS on a lot more products. But the big thing, the first really big product this year is the ATEM Television Studio Pro 4K. We did a HD version of this last year. And the feedback was there was really 2 types of people that couldn't use it. The first people needed more SDI. And some other people wanted some Ultra HD. So this one is a 12G SDI switcher. It's got a lot of the same features that the other one has. So it's got DVE, and it's got audio mixing, and all the control panel built in. But what's really nice about it is it's got the 8 12G SDI inputs. And it's also got 8 12G SDI outputs. They're program outs, that you can use to send off to the cameras because it has some small camera control in it, and you can then run those as camera feeds or program return feeds to the cameras. But they also have mix-minus support on each one of them, so it's pretty powerful. I mean, you've got basically 8 program mounts plus the normal program mount, so you've got lots of distribution. Now, what's really exciting is we've put a Teranex Express on each input. The switcher does HD and Ultra HD rates, doesn't do SD. I mean, there's really, I don't think anyone around doing SD anymore, so we've dropped it on a few things, not many, but some things. But each input actually has a full standards converter, so it doesn't matter what the input format is, which is kind of funny because if you get it on the, like, it's quite easy to set the switcher to the wrong video standard. You can have it set to like 720p or something and it's all working, and then you realize, oh no, I'm recording the wrong standard. So you actually have to double check which video format you got it set to, because it doesn't matter. The inputs just keep working. You can put anything in, it just works. So it's pretty cool. Because of course there's also resynchronizers on the inputs. We've also, it's not, that's just a small part of it. This is our most advanced switcher. It's not our biggest switcher, but it's definitely our most powerful switcher by quite a way. And it's got an ATEM advanced chroma key in it as well. So we only had that key on the 4ME switcher. Now it's on the TV Studio Pro 4K. So you've got things like you can eyedropper the color, you can do spill suppression, you can grade the foreground so it matches the background, so you can match the layers. It's really quite powerful and it's built in. We also have 90 frames of Ultra HD media pool for motion, over 2 motion clips, but it's like 300 frames I think in 1080 and more in 720p. So there's motion media built in. But the most powerful, I think the most powerful thing we've done is we've taken the Fairlight audio mixer and built it into the switcher. So if you look at it, you can see the audio mix is quite different on this model. The UI looks quite different. This is the software control panel. And you've got 6-band parametric EQ on each input channel. You can break any input into dual mono, and so you can have those as separate treatments on either of those mono channels. And also we've got dynamics. So we've got compressor, limiter, noise gate, expander, and that's on each individual input and the master output and the analog input, and the talkback microphone also goes into the mixer, so you can use it for commentary. The other cool thing we've got on the other channel, you can see some of the channels that are broken out, is dual mono. If you run the analog input, and the mic input of course is mono by default, if you run them as dual mono, there's actually a stereo simulator. You can actually create stimulated stereo to make the microphone input sound much nicer. And then you can see it working with a CCU panel, so it's got some camera control built in, but it's still got Ethernet. You can still run external control panels, so you can have a whole group of people all working together. And the other thing is the Multi-View is Ultra HD. So it's, even if you're running in HD, you can run the Ultra HD Multi-View out and get double the resolution. So I might quickly show you, if we can switch over to the UI on the switcher here. You can see this is on the color, camera control page. If I go to the audio mixer, you can see the audio mixer over here. And if I click on one of the channels, you can see up there, this is the compressor, and I can change some of the parameters. And each input has one of these. And if I click on here, here's the equalizer. So I can just click and drag if I want to create a notch filter, and there's all sorts of parameter adjustments to alter the characteristics of the different bands. And over the right-hand side here, I'm using this right hand, I'm actually left-handed. You can see here's the stereo simulator page. And the other thing I forgot to mention, there's also, on the analog inputs, there's up to 4 frames of audio delay. So if you've got some processing delay in your cameras, you can match the analog inputs to that. So there's the stereo simulator here. But what's really interesting is if we go into the switcher settings, which is, the switcher's operating in Ultra HD 5994, I could change that to, well, I'll change it to 24 frames at 1080p. Now if we can get a bit of a wider shot, and you can see the multi-view here, if I change that setting, it'll show you really how those input standards converters work. Because what's happened, I've just switched the switcher standard. The switcher's come back. This monitor's a bit slow to relock, so the switcher's up here running. But you can see all the inputs still work. That's because the switcher changed standards. They're Ultra HD inputs, but the switcher video standard changed, and all the input standards converters just converted the entire every input that's there, and it all just came back up again. Which is why it's funny. You can kind of have your switcher set to the wrong standard really easily now. But it's awesome that it doesn't matter what you plug in, it just works. So if we can go back to the slides now, that it, we'll keep moving, otherwise it's a bit slow. So that switcher is available now, it'll be 2995. So the next product up is Davinci Resolve. We've done a huge update to Davinci, and what we've done is we've basically integrated Fusion in. Not only does Fusion get a big update, but also it lives well inside Davinci. editors get a chance to add, essentially construct effects, but you've got a whole lot of other advantages because Fusion's actually inside there. I mean, this comes back to what Blackmagic exists to do. This company was founded to empower creativity. If you looked at the post-production industry back in the sort of 90s and earlier, what shocked me was a very heavy power structure. It was pretty much the guy who could get a bank loan was the guy who had owned the post house. And you had all these wonderful creative people who worked so hard, but they had, you know, they were just sort of crushed under this hierarchy of kind of even technology often too, of people talking about technology. So, you know, to us putting Fusion into Davinci, I don't actually know what it's going to mean. I don't know quite what people are going to do with it, but there's so many things you can play with as you're using it. It's really quite exciting. The possibilities are kind of slightly unknown, but you've got now the ability to build incredibly complex visual effects, and you know, but we also get titling and paint by default because that's all in there. So it's a huge amount of work. I mean, the guys have done an extraordinary job. As you can see, the interface is much nicer looking, but so it's a nice, more modern UI now, but it really works very well inside Davinci. Remember, Davinci collaborates, so being able to bring everyone together, I think, is a really important thing as well. But I think that we saw when we beefed up the editing and we started getting people using Davinci for editing, a lot of those editors end up becoming colorists, and they sort of drifted into color because they could. And I'm interested to see what happens now, whether people drift out of editing into visual effects, and it doesn't have to be so demarcated. People are more free now to move around and try things. So I think it'll be really interesting. We've also done a lot of updates to the Fairlight page. We've got Adr support and a whole bunch of other things. Particularly needed to sort of finish off a few things like that to be able to support the consoles. We've also got some nice updates to the edit page, and also we've done some more stuff on the color page, particularly on the LUT browsing. We've got a visual LUT browser and some more effects, some film repair tools, things like that. Because remember, Davinci Resolve is also the host for the film scanner, so there's a lot of archive content coming in, and people need to try and match that up a bit. And of course, it all collaborates. You can have multiple seats. You can have different people coming in using one seat. Sometimes the colorist will come over and do some work on the edit by sitting down, and the editor walks off and has a coffee. Sometimes they can work together. You can start small and just grow. And that's what it's all about. We're creating freedom here, and people need to be free. So people collaborating or not collaborating or switching seats on the same system, it's up to the people who are using it to decide that. It's not up to us. We're just essentially trying to create as much possibility for freedom as we can. So what I'll do is, this is the bit where I screw everything up because I'm not a demo guy, but I was going to show you just quickly a few things, sort of how this works. So we've got, if we can switch over to Davinci, here it is, and I've got a timeline open, and you can see I've got an edit, the thumb's positioned on a clip. Now, if you haven't seen Davinci before, what's interesting about this is you can go to the color page, and it's the same position in the edit. If I go to the Fairlight page, it's the same position in the edit. I'm just a single click away from anything. If I go to the Deliver page, this is where you do your exporting out to various Netflix or QuickTime Movies or YouTube, whatever you need to do. It's all just a click away. And now when you go to Fusion, it's the same thing. It's just a click away. And you can see there, the left node is actually the video input from the edit page, and the output is on the right-hand side. So she really does a lot of announcements, this lady, isn't it? So basically what happens is the video comes in on the left-hand side, it just connects out to the output side, and then goes back out to the timeline. So what we do, if we want to do something, all we have to do is put it in that line. So if I want to look at some effects, it's really quite simple, and it's worth just pointing out how it works. So I've got a few different effects here, and I can, for example, select this grid warp, drop it down into this line, and now it's put this grid warp in line. So to sort of demonstrate how that works, say if I kind of tweak, this actress isn't going to like what I'm doing to her face, but now I go back to the edit page, and it's there, see? So there's no import exporting. She's going to be very angry. But there's no import exporting, there's nothing. It's just all there. It just all coexists in the same app. So if I go back to the Fusion page, I can delete this. Now that's a 2D composition. It's coming in 2D, it's going through a 2D field and going out as 2D, but Fusion is actually a 3D program. So there's also some tools along here. I can select tools in here, and I can also shift click. There's a whole bunch of tools. You can search the tools. You can see it's got a lot of, but it's like basically Lego bricks. You're really just building filters like Lego bricks. In the old days when I used to work in post-production, these would be separate processing devices and you plug video cables between them. It's pretty much the same thing. It's like wiring up equipment. So for example, if I wanted to go into 3D space, I can put an image plane here and connect it in. And now, if you want to look at any node, these two viewers here, if you click a 1, it puts it up in the left viewer. If you click 2, it goes into the right viewer. So you can kind of look at different nodes, almost probe them and see what's going on. Now, if I go up into here, you can see that I can move around in 3D space, and that image is now in 3D space. So say, for example, if I wanted to put a title in, I can put a 3D title in over here, and I'll look at that in the right view by clicking 2. There's my title, and I can move that around in sort of 3D space. And now, you know, I'm kind of in 3D space, so if I wanted to, say, compose those back together again, then I just use a 3D merge tool. This is a very common tool where you basically, it's like the compositing section. And now if I click on that, I can now see that I've got these two items in 3D space. And all I have to do, that's a 3D space thing, so if I want to go back to 2D space, I just convert that to 2D space in this render node, and I drop it down. Actually, I'll delete that link there. I'll drop it down there, and then I'll look at that output, and there I am. Now my text is a little big, but if I go back to the edit page, there it is. I mean, so I've just built something. I mean, obviously this is pretty simple. There's particles and all. I mean, I've got a particle generator and a particle renderer, and you can put other gravitational effects in the line between them and create like turbulence plug nodes, or you can have like gravity nodes and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it really is quite amazing watching it. It's very granular because, of course, it's been a high-end effects tool used in LA and on major feature films. What I think is exciting has been putting this into here. So, you know, say if I want to go back and adjust something, because my text is really very big, I just have to click on the node, and I can come across here and reduce the size a little. Now, I'm not really a visual effects guy. I'm just doing something very, very simple. But when I go back, it's just there. I mean, it's like constructing effects. So what does that mean? Well, I think from the point of view of an editor, you just see it as sort of either a sort of an effects builder. But for a visual effects person, it's still a very powerful visual effects environment. And the scripting also works. So all the Fusion scripting still works. So this is, you know, for young kids who are coding and are used to coding, you can actually, they might even find it nicer to script the stuff. So I don't know what kind of blend of technology and creativity is going to come together with this. I'm fascinated to find out. We've done no market research on this. We never do user studies or, you know, any of that stuff. So we have no idea what's going to happen. We just do these things and think it sounds right, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. So that's kind of how it works. And the other cool thing is that by being inside Fusion, if I bring on this clip browser, you might recognize this clip browser from the color page. You can click between the different shots, and it'll just switch between the compositions. So there's the advantage of having Fusion inside Davinci. You just move up and down a massive edit. It could be a feature film, and you're just clicking on the various compositions. They're all just there. Also, you can load in Fusion projects from the previous Fusion into this as well. And Fairlight also allows you to load Fairlight projects in as well. So we haven't abandoned the older generations of software. You can bring those projects in. So I'll quickly move through a couple of other things. In the edit page, we've got subtitles now. So if I move to a subtitle, we can import a SRT file into subtitles. And the great thing is when you render that out, you can take it out to HTML or SRT files or burn it in. There's quite a lot of flexibility because different deliverables like QuickTime movies and things like that, you might want to, the user actually selects on and off the caption. So you've got a lot of power in how you export that out. The other thing we've got is we've got tabbed timelines. There's a really good video that'll be on the website when it changes over after the press conference. It goes into quite a lot of detail. The what's new in Davinci video is a bit longer than normal because it spends a bit of time in some of these areas. But we've got tabbed timelines. You can also come over here and add an extra timeline layer. And if you need to, you can copy and paste between timelines. So that's kind of a cool thing as well. The other thing that I think is really quite nice, if you look in the effects library, in the title section here, these are actually Fusion compositions. So one of the great things is if you're an editor, you don't particularly maybe want to know about Fusion. So we've got a bunch of the Fusion title effects, and we've built them as compositions and put them in the title section of the edit page. So if you drop them in, it's a Fusion composition, but you've got no idea that it is. To you, it's just a plugin that does titling. So we've got a timeline here with titles in it, and if you scroll up and down, you can see got a bunch of different wacky and kind of strange and wacky titles. They're actually Fusion compositions. When you drop them in the timeline, you update the text. Over in the Fusion page, it's a composition. So it's quite interesting. Also, we've got annotations and notes and other benefits that the larger facilities need. Over on the Fairlight page, I'll click over here. We've now got Adr Support, which isn't there. But basically, you can load a list in, I might be on the wrong timeline actually. But anyway, you can load a list in and you can bring it as a comma or tab separated text files, and you can have all your dialogue in there, and you can just basically do all your voiceovers. The other thing that we've got is we've got a lot of effects that we've added, some really quite nice ones. If I go to, how do I change the timeline to, where is it? Oh, there it is. That's the one, I want that one. That looks better. So in fact, I might, if I go back, I can show you, there it is. There's the dialogue, so you can see there. So you can load the list in and you can do all the dialogue stuff, and you can record in the dialogue while it's playing back the thing. So I'll turn that off and I'll go back over to the effects library. Now we've got a whole bunch of really nice effects. One of the problems is Davinci's on Mac, Windows and Linux, and a lot of the open plugins only work on Mac and Windows. So we've done a bunch of built-in effects so that you can move them between platforms and you get a similar experience between them. If you're running the large Fairlight console, you might actually have a Linux machine running that, and then you've got a bunch of guys using Macs. It really varies, even within the same facility. So you've got to be able to move the project backwards and forwards. You've got to have some commonality in the tool sets between the platforms. So we've got that. Like for example, if I drop a noise reduction down here, here's the noise reduction filter. They've all got beautiful UIs like the echo or the reverb tool's got like a room size. You can change your room size and get the different effects. This is a noise reduction tool. It'll actively analyze the noise profile. There's hum removers. There's all kinds of other stuff in here. But I won't really spend a lot of time because I know we don't have a lot of time. The other thing too, just before I leave here, we've got like fixed playhead now. So you can, this is particularly good when you're running on the large console. And also if you're doing a lot more audio work, we've got like video and audio scrollers, so you can run those.
Aid, identify the person I'm speaking with.
Although the video scroller isn't playing, I don't know why. So there's a lot more features in there. And on the color side, just to finish up, on the color page, we've got LUT browser now. You can see how they work. This is actually a list of the LUTs that are built in here. And you can just browse by scrolling around them. You can see what your clip will look like through different LUTs. And also over here in the effects side, we've got oh, that was already open. See, I'm not the slick demo guy. We've got a bunch of filters that have been added in there, and also for like film, like dust and scratch and some of those other things as well. So that's pretty much resolved, but it's definitely worth checking out the videos on the website to get a really good in-depth view of what we've done. This is just a quick overview. Right, if we can go back to the slides, I can keep going. So Davinci Resolve 15 is free. It's a public beta today, and a lot of this stuff will be in there. A couple of the advanced things won't. They'll be in the paid version, but the paid version's only $2.99, so it's not really very unaffordable, that's for sure. The other thing I wanted to talk about quickly is the Fairlight consoles. We've had to redesign and rebuild the Fairlight console. It really wasn't manufacturable in the form when we acquired Fairlight, so we've been working hard on that. Also, again, we want to be able to enhance, empower creativity. So what we've done is we've built them in modules, and you can buy the individual items as modules and bolt them together any way you want. So you can buy the chassis and put whatever modules in you like. So for example, you can see we've got the different, the edit controller and some of the modules. They're much cheaper. The screen, for example, the LCD, we've had to upgrade. It's brighter, it's higher resolution, but also it, funny enough, runs the camera operating system. So the one you see on the front of the booth is running the camera operating system, and it's got Ethernet, it's got SDI and HDMI. Depending what you plug in is depending how it behaves. So if you plug video in, it's a video monitor. If you plug Ethernet in, it talks to Davinci and becomes the channel control graphics screen for those channels on the console. So it's quite flexible, and I think you could start off small and add more. You could put a large bay in and add more modules. It's really up to the customer to decide how they want to handle that. You can see the benefits of our work. This is the edit controller part of the console that we acquired when we bought Fairlight. This is our version of it. So you can see the graphics have been dramatically enhanced, and it's much more effort in the manufacturability of it as well. Now we've got some prices. The 2-bay configured here with the fader panel and the fader control and 2 screens and the edit controller will be $21,995. That's fully fitted. So this is the bundle price if you bought all the setup as a bundle. The 3-bay will be just under $30,000, and the 5-bay will be just under $50,000, which is, basically it's $49,000. So that'll be available in a few months. We've also got an update to the film scanner, where this new film scanner we're showing at the front here. It's about a month away, but it's got Thunderbolt 3, so that's really good for Mac and Windows platforms. And it's also got PCI Express. You can run a PCI Express cable, which is also good for Windows, but mainly Linux. So it's much more multi-platform support now. And also it's got a timecode and biphase TAC out, so you can run audio files, which was another request people made of us to be able to. We're getting a lot more people now starting to get all their content repurposed. I mean, film is Ultra HD and it's HDR, so people want to move that across and get it onto the latest streaming platforms like Netflix and Apple TV. But also what's good is we're showing an update. It double scans will now scan HDR, and that software update will be for free, and it'll be on the new scanner and the old scanner. All the customers will get it. Now, to get the best benefit, there's a new HDR film gate. They're only $300 or something like that. So you really want that gate, but you still do, the guys told me yesterday, actually there still is a benefit with the current gate. So that's a good thing. So that'll be available soon. So lastly is cameras. Now, we've been asked so much about the Pocket Cinema camera. Like, literally every interview I do with anyone now, they go, when are you going to do an Ultra HD version of the Pocket Cinema camera? So we felt like this is not quite shipping yet, and we didn't want to, normally we probably wouldn't want to talk about it, but the product is finished, and we thought we didn't want to come to another NAB without answering the question, what are you going to do with Pocket Cinema camera, particularly when it's back there in the office, basically finished. We've really just got to run the manufacturing process now and get it into production. But obviously you've seen the poster on the front of the hall. So hang on a sec. And so this is what it looks like. You can see it's a very new design. It's completely redesigned. There's really nothing much left of the old one. But we've used all the knowledge, everything that we've learned from the original Pocket camera. So for example, it's a 60 frames a second 4K sensor. It can do Ultra HD at 60 frames a second as well. It'll do windowed HD at 120 frames a second. It's got 13 stops of dynamic range. So it's a pretty nice sensor. It's 4/3 size, so it doesn't have the crop factor problems. The other camera, the other Pocket camera, was a slightly smaller sensor. So this one fills out the micro 4/3 lens mount really nicely. But the good thing is it's micro 4/3, so you can use all the lenses that you have. People actually often spend a lot more money on lenses than they do the camera, so you really want to keep that investment. We wanted to be able to, I mean, I've got lenses too I'd like to use. The good thing is it's 25,600 ISO, it's got dual gain. That's one thing I didn't get is the native ISOs for the two different gain rates. So the guys will know that. So you can see that's the dynamic range at various ISO settings. The other thing it's using version 4.0 of our color science. We had that in Ursa Broadcast, and we're going to be rolling it into some of the other cameras like the original Micro Studio camera and the studio cameras and other things like that. So this is the 4th generation of our color science, which is generally built into Davinci, so you don't really notice that it's being used. Most other camera manufacturers have SDKs and they plug them in and they've got all the color science in there. We're the same, but we are breaking that out into a separate SDK because other software needs to get the color science as well. So, and particularly even the film scanner, people wanted to be able to get access to the data. So we're going to be breaking that out into an SDK. The body of the camera is a carbon fiber polycarbonate composite. It's a new type of material. It's basically kind of a combination of polycarbonate and carbon fiber. So the cameras you see on the floor here are much heavier than the one, well, not much heavier, but they are heavier than the ones that will be in production. They'll be lighter. Lightness was a huge thing we wanted on this product. So it's a new material, and it's quite nice. It's a weird sort of material. That's where the battery goes. It's a sort of a LP6 Canon-style battery that goes in the bottom. And you can see the front there, the multifunction controls. So what you have is the scroll wheel on the front does iris, and that you adjust iris. And then if you... I'm having quite a bad day because she keeps talking. But then we've got white balance and shutter angle and ISO adjustments on the top. So when you hold the camera, you realise quite what it's like. You can feel the controls. It's really quite ergonomic. There are really 3 things that drove the design. Was we needed a very big screen. We wanted a lot of really good ergonomics on how you controlled it. But also we wanted to make sure that it was really good audio. That was another really big key feature that we wanted on the camera. So also the other thing, I should go back, the other thing you notice is a record button on the front, so you can actually, the philosophy on this camera was if Ursa is the camera that you go to shoot people with, this is the camera you often use to shoot yourself. And so often you've got a lot of people who set the camera up and they're doing an interview, and they're the camera person and the talent. So we're very mindful of people who actually need to shoot themselves. It's running the Blackmagic Camera OS, so you've got a lot of cool features like camera presets, but it's also got 3D LUTs built in, and you can actually record the 3D LUTs. You can bake them into the file. You've also got camera settings and metadata and all the other stuff. It's basically an Ursa Mini Pro shrunk down into a small size, obviously with a different sensor. It's not as high-end a sensor, but it's almost the same usability. And it's also got Bluetooth built in, so you can do the same Bluetooth control Ursa Mini Pro can do. You can use the same protocol and control to do this. Now I talked about audio. We've done a lot of work on it. There's 4 microphones on it, 2 microphones either side, so we can do a lot more with the audio and get a lot more better quality. You really want to be able to get great audio built into the camera without plugging a whole bunch of stuff on top if you can get away with it. But at the same time, you still can plug in microphones. It's got a mini XLR and it's got phantom power, so you can plug in a standard microphone and power it if you're doing interviews. Looking at the side, you can see the rubber boots. Now what's interesting about the rubber boots, we learned some things also from the original cinema camera. When you move those rubber boots out of the way, they were kind of in the way. So what happens now, they're on a single point, so you can pull them out of the way and rotate them around. And you'll notice on the side, we've got a full-size HDMI connector, which was probably one of the most annoying things of the original Pocket camera. We've got microphone input for a normal camera mic and a headphone socket. We've got the XLR connector, and then we've also got a camera style, a pro camera style, a 2-pin power connector socket. So you can latch that in. But what you'll notice is, see there's a USB connector there? We can record directly to flash drive. So there's 2 cards inside. There's the SD card and CFast cards. You can, it's also a UHS 2 card, the SD card slot, but you can record straight to an external disk, like a flash drive. So what I'll do is I'll bring the camera out. I think, here we go. Here's the camera. So you can see I've got media in it, and I've got it running, and there it is. Everyone looks really good. And I can record. So that's recording now. It's recording you guys recording me. Which is pretty cool. You can see you've got all the settings on the back, all there. But also you've even got access to the high frame rate. So if I go push the high frame rate button, I can go to the high frame rate instantly from the back. So if you want to catch some action. But what's really cool is if I take the media out, so I'll take the media out so there's no media in it. And I really wanted to show this. So on the side here is the USB-C connection. Oh no, that's broken off. If I plug that in, what happens is the media comes back up. And I've got 37 minutes on this drive. So now if I record, I'm recording to the media disk, and that's working fine. I wave everyone. Look at that, I'm getting it. So what's interesting is what I think is really powerful about that is if I record onto this disk, this is the disk that I can edit off. So if I take this disk back over to the machine over here and plug it in, it'll mount on the computer. I'm actually recording to my media disk. I'll go back to the edit timeline. Here's the file. If I drag that down over here, this is you guys. So now, if I go to the color page, I can do a bit of color correction, and that's you guys there. I'll scroll through a bit. So I think that's a really nice feature from the point of view that you can record straight onto the media disk. You don't have to do a whole lot of card shuffling, and you don't need any external SSD recorder. You could use an SSD to USB-C adapter. I mean, it could even be a big disk array, but I mean, it'd be hard to take a portable camera with a disk array. So if we can switch back to the slides, but you can really see how powerful it is to be able to do that. That's an expansion port that'll be able to do other things, but for the moment we're using it to be able to record directly to hard disks. I think HFS Plus and exFAT, I think, is the 2 formats we use. So I think it makes it a pretty nice extra feature. So there's a bunch of things like that where it goes way beyond the original Pocket camera. So of course, you can see some of the usage cases here. We've got 3 cameras in an interview situation here with a microphone plugged into one. So you can then go straight over to Davinci's multicam and edit that footage together, and you've got, because it's a small camera, you can now have more angles, and one person can do this. You can have a 1-person crew, so I think it's great for that kind of use. Obviously, we've got a lot of people, there's a still frame, still photo button on the front, so people doing fashion shoots and some of these other things, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff now. There's a lot of social media package that comes with a fashion shoot. You don't just have photos now, you've got all the social media package around that. This is what this camera can really do. It can get you the behind the scenes stuff, but also you can take still frames in the same colorimetry of the camera itself, so that can be really useful as well. One of the most requested features was actually still frame button on the Pocket camera. The other thing you can do is that's the blogger type situation where someone's doing their own blog style programs. It's a food program as an example here. Also high-end weddings. You can put it on a gimbal. It's quite flexible from that point of view. Big screen, so you need that big LCD to be able to focus in Ultra HD. That's why the screen's so big. But at the same time, indie film is a huge area for These cameras, they are affordable so people can get into the TV industry through them. And you can got that big screen so you can review back what you're doing and see with the crew, you can watch back on the back of the camera itself. And we'll try to allow the camera to have as much in it so you don't have to have a lot of rigging. But at the same time, you can rig it up. You can do all these kinds of gimbals and stabilized platforms. And you can go off and hire big cinema lenses and bolt them on through adapters. It can still do that. It still has that capability of pimping it out to be as big as you possibly want it to be. So it'll be due in September. We're saying September because we want to be conservative. It'll be 1295. It's a little more money than the original Pocket Cinema camera. But what's great is it comes with Davinci Resolve Studio. So that extra money is kind of like the Davinci bit. So it kind of ends up being roughly the same price if you include the value of Davinci Resolve Studio. So what you get is you get the camera and a full visual effects, editing, color correction, and professional audio post-production solution all together. I don't see any other way. There's not much more we can do for people to get them going and doing their own feature films and TV programming, but that's what it's all about, right? This is what we're here for. So that's pretty much it. Sorry I've run 6 minutes, but for anyone who's watching the stream, we're actually streaming this. We're going to have theatre presentations online after this, so if they bear with us, they'll be able to watch that. But for all you guys, again, I want to really thank you guys. I mean, the guys have worked so hard to get here to make these products. You guys, without your support, we couldn't do it. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.